and today's talk is called Fundamentals of Hip Hop, and it should be a good crash course into everything you should need to know.
Cool.
Take it away. This is Payton Long.
What's up, guys? What's up? I think. Oh yeah, sure.
Honor of.
Can we dim?
Yeah.
Because dimming is nice.
We can do that.
Cool.
I don't know if we can.
So I guess we're just gonna start with a question and answer. But before we do that, I'll just go into a little bit of a background as to how I started making music, I guess. So I got forced into playing the guitar by my mom when I was about 6 years old. She's right there. It was nice enough to come. And I'd say probably when I was about 11 years old, in between 6 and 11, I had learned to play every instrument I felt like playing to the ability that I felt comfortable playing them at. I was never exactly a savant at any of them. You know, I just could pick them up because once you understand music, it all starts to boil down to the same thing. But when I was about 11, I sold my soul to the devil and bought a Pro Tools rig from Best Buy when I was saved up my $450. And that was my start into computer-based music. Now, I've been listening to hip-hop for my entire life. I gotta credit my dad on that one, but he's definitely kind of an old school guy in that regard. So it was mostly hip-hop coming up. And started to pick up turntables around the same time, and that's what the whole focus shifted towards pretty quickly. And I've experimented with many other genres, but as of right now, it's mostly pop music and hip hop. And I say pop music because I'm currently signed as a creative for a studio here in Austin, or publishing music group. I'm not sure what exactly they're calling it specifically because it's long. And I make pop music and commercial music. Some of it satisfies my soul, a lot of it does not, but pop music's pop music. And so a lot of the approaches that I have for making hip hop are a lot of the approaches that are shared with how people go about making pop music. And when I say pop music and commercial music, I don't necessarily mean Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and all those people. You can like them or not like them, but there are lessons to be learned from popular music and million-dollar songs that can be applied to any style. And I think that they're absolutely worth noting. Some of them are creative decisions. Some of them are mixing decisions. But the thing is that one of the things that I learned pretty quickly about music is that it is a lot less about the music and a lot more about the execution of your musical idea. So I hear a lot of, we all know the 4 chords, right? The 4 chord song. If you can re-execute those 4 chords, awesome, every single time, you'll have songs forever and ever. Just little things like that. So a lot of my music is pretty simple. I'm definitely a path of least resistance guy. So I tend to do as little as possible, and then just whatever it is I decide to do, I do really, really well. So if you guys are thinking that there's like all these different compressor tricks and EQ nonsense, it's not any of that. Yes?
Oh, sorry, I was...
Are we waving out the door? God. Okay, yeah, so with that, we'll just go ahead and jump straight into Q&A. Are there any questions off top? Anything at all about business or about creativity? Anything?
You track in your MIDI like with a keyboard, or do you do it in?
No! I actually don't use any MIDI controllers. This is a special occasion. And this is Mitch's super awesome elevator MIDI fighter thing. So please come play with it afterwards. But no, I actually don't track a lot of MIDI from external controllers. I'm a keyboard player, very literally. Just the computer keyboard. Anything else?
I have a question I'm interested about. Could you talk about how you came to making the commercial music, the jump that you made to start making the music heard?
So that's a really, really hard one because it happened really fast. I started working at Dub Academy when I was 16, 17, interning and writing curriculum and then eventually teaching. And I started working and then eventually took over the Dub Academy studio. And in that time, I had developed a really, really large portfolio of music that was pretty open format in terms of its execution. So you could make it a rap beat, you could turn it into a pop song, you could put it in a commercial, generally open format stuff. And then as I was doing all that work, the winter came and the business slowed down because that's how it is when you're freelance. And all of a sudden, there were no gigs to play, and no rappers that were trying to buy beats in the snow, and no classes to teach. So I was out of luck there. So I ended up traveling for a little bit, came back, was dead broke. One of my homies threw me a bone and was like, I want to take you out to these people's houses out in West Austin. This is a big mansion with this woman who's just like the Great Gatsby of Austin artists. And she just like bestows upon all of us commoners fun and support and things like that. And through working with her, I ran into one of her proteges. His name was, it started with an A. I'm not going to tell you his actual name because the story ends pretty poorly. But his whole thing is he was a songwriter. And it turned into one of those things where I had gotten taken advantage of in the business, but I kept a pretty tight grip of it. But in his time of him messing with people and trying to convince people that things were going on that there weren't, he ended up convincing the people at a very nice studio here in Austin who saw what was going on and decided to save me and let everyone else go on their way. And as far as I'm aware, everyone else, a part of that camp, is out of business. But it was a really kind of messed up getting taken advantage of by the industry that led me to this really nice studio. And I would say, in terms of like the commercial and pop music, I had always intended to make that type of music, but there was not much of a business plan in order for that to happen. It was just me making songs that singers could sing to if they wanted, and making a lot of them, and just getting screwed over a couple times.
Yeah, you fail more than you succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I hope you just succeed really hard, so that no one else sees the leftovers. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yes.
Since you did get taken advantage of, like, what would you have done differently to kind of avoid that if you could?
Honestly, I'm not sure if there's anything I would have done differently because it worked out pretty well, and I'm still alive, and I have all the rights to all my music, and I didn't go absolutely completely broke in that time. So as long as you're eating, you're not completely broke, and you have the rights to your music, you're really not in it that bad. Because a lot of artists get taken advantage of way harder than that. I think it's mostly key, especially in terms of music, to not burn the house down immediately. And what I mean by that is that once you realize that something is up, to not completely freak out. And this is something that I see people in lots of artistic endeavors happen. You know, they get taken advantage of, or they realize something is going down, and they decide to throw their hands up and sound the alarm and try to expose people and try to sue people and things like that. And that's not how this type of thing works. You know, because generally speaking, you're going up against people who have way more clout and way more money and way more time and are not scared of you. You know, and the music business does not decide the happenings based on what's right and what's wrong. You know? So just kind of stay calm throughout the whole thing. Generally, you can find your way out. I would just say, watch the details. Make sure you're not sending entire projects to people that are taking advantage of you. Don't completely sign away rights to everything. Make sure you have terms on all your contracts that are manageable. You know, don't sign an 8-year contract with someone. People do that, and it's ridiculous. You know, try to keep it manageable. Just little things like that. But stay calm and don't freak out would be the main thing. Anything else? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have my glasses on. I just saw motion. Anyway, okay, cool. So, everyone here likes hip hop. I hope.
Get out if you don't.
Well, we're not going to start with hip hop because we're going to save it for a little later. But I wanted to start with just a whole track breakdown of a pop song that I did with the singer around town. His name is Aiden Cross. I don't think he goes by that anymore because he was one of the victims of the whole thing. But he's absolutely awesome, and we ended up doing this pop, trancey trap thing that ended up in a commercial, you know, just like it never officially came out, but people ended up getting a hold of the rights to it and doing their thing. But this is the whole thing in a nutshell. So I hope everybody knows Ableton well enough, because I will not be going into the specifics of how necessarily all this is done, but why. So right off the top, you see we have vocals. I like to try to keep all my stuff in order. Organization is key. So we got vocals, melodic stuff happening from top to bottom. Then the drums kick in. I usually keep the bass at the bottom, but that might not be the case here. And then all sorts of non-musical additions for the sake of transition. Now, the way this song came to be was that this song was not supposed to be a trap song per se. It was recorded at 128 BPM, and they did all the vocal work. All I did was take off a little bit of the bass on the channel and sidechained it and chorused it a little bit, but nothing major. They sent me these vocals, and they sent me the chord progression, and this is how a lot of commercial music tends to start. Very rarely is the singer and the producer and the engineer all meeting at the same time to hash out a single idea. Normally vocals get written first and then they get sent off, or a track gets written and that gets sent off, and then hopefully we kind of meet in the middle here. But they sent me the vocals first and they sent me the chord progression. The chord progression was kind of weak, so I did a little bit of stuff to it, and it ended up looking like this. Standard progressive house motion with one on every 8th note or 16th note. And that's the chord progression for the whole song. So there's that on this instrument. This instrument is being sourced from Massive. And pretty much just stays like that the whole time with a little bit of automation here. Shouts out to Deadmau5 for the cutoff trick. But that's that. Right? So on top of that, next up, we have this thing right here. And I should probably turn this down a little bit. Actually, one of the more subtle sounds. We have this, which is the exact same MIDI, just drawn out. And then we have this sound, which is the same MIDI again, with different rhythm. And then we have this, which is the same MIDI, just longer notes. And then there's this thing for a little bit of bite on top. We got an 808, which is just the bottom line of the first MIDI track. I don't like to mess around with notes. I like to just take what I have and make it sound good. So that got a pretty standard hi-hat with some trickery for panning. We got this little build-up snare with a filter, which doesn't sound very good, but in context it does. A little bit of transition thing. We got this clap with a bunch of echoes on it. Snares, kick, blah, 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 yeah. So all together, I'll play the first vocal in to, actually we'll just start from the second verse. Baby, pull me in a ride, just you and I can be your cocaine high. Taste your sweat. How dirty can you get? Scratches on my chest, and you never come down. And it feels like we want some more. Then it breaks down into this section, which is the hook. Catch my breath, 'cause my heart's falling. Catch my breath when I hear you come. Catch my breath, oh my heart is pulsing. Every taste I'm getting, I'm catching my breath. 'Cause my heart is falling. Catch my breath when I hear you come. Catch my breath. Yeah, go build up. Cool. So there's really not that much happening in this song. Now that you've seen the project file, there's not that much going down. A lot of it.
It's a really good song.
You like it?
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Is it okay? They help me out here, guys, please. Okay, yeah. So very much pop music. And like I said, it is not about what's going on musically. It is about the execution. Okay, so we have a very full, very prominent mix. The drums are interesting, but not overbearing. The whole track here and the key to making music that people want to listen to is that it has to have a level of maturity in terms of its execution. Okay, so we understand what the point of the song is, and it's the vocals. We're not trying to overshadow the vocals in any way. We're just trying to give them a bed to sit on that is consistent with whatever genre it is a part of, right? So we played by the rules from top to bottom here. Yes?
So you were talking about the hi-hats, and you said you had like a panning trick. Is one panned all the way to the left, one all the way to the right, or is it like half?
No, one is spread both ways, and one's in the middle. Which, what's up?
Mid-side.
Yeah.
You can explain.
And it's pretty easy. If you go to the simpler here, that's kind of one of my neat tricks that I like to use on hi-hats from time to time. You go to the simpler, and I think, actually this one is naturally spread, but if it's not naturally spread, there's a spread knob right here. Things kind of go out. It's really cool on 808s too. But yes. What?
Is it phasing?
No, not really.
808s doesn't phase it out.
Oh, it does. It does loses power, but it sounds neat. You know, you wouldn't use it as like a main 808. But the real trick that's happening here is the vocal, and the vocal is doing a lot of our work for us. So if you listen to it,
every taste I catch my.
nice and predictable. And there's a little bit of songwriting magic here. You can come on in. There's a little bit of songwriting magic that's happening here that is easing this whole song along. Because again, the purpose of this song is not necessarily to be listened to. It is to back stuff up. You know, if you're going to sit here and listen to this song, this is not the first thing that you would go to. But if you listen, what's up?
Oh, sorry. I just noticed you have about like how many tracks? Like 20?
I think this is about 30.
How do most of your tracks have about this length? Because I know you have
30 is
like
actually a
hundreds.
little low for pop music.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. That's why.
I have another one that's probably about 40. Most of my hip hop ones are about 10.
Okay.
I keep it very, very simple. But a lot of those tracks are vocal takes.
Okay.
So I've seen 30, 40 tracks of only vocal comps.
Yeah.
I have some questions.
Yes.
For the vocals, did they just send them to you like that? or
Yeah.
did you- Oh, wow.
Effects and all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing. They have a pretty straightforward idea of what they want. But here, if you listen to the lyrics, it's got this super, super neat trick of lyric writing, and it's the 3-to-1 rule. I'm not sure if that's necessarily what it's called, but it's the 3-to-1 rule. So you just do the same thing 3 times, and then the 4th time you switch it up a little bit. This is pretty basic psychology. Usually people see things 3 times, they expect it the 4th time, right? So if the fourth time you don't do it, they're like, oh, every taste I get, I catch my breath. Not catch my breath. Every taste I get, I catch my breath. Oh, okay. It's easy enough to remember, complicated enough that you want to hear it again. Very mature in its execution here. Now, when it comes to picking out all the sounds all take up a certain section of the frequency. And my stepdad Jason right here actually helped me out with a great graphic for this. I call this the good enough pyramid. So if you follow this pyramid, your music should be good enough. Now, me being a teacher, I hear and critique a lot of music every single day, all day, whether it's in person or over email or through SoundCloud or blah, 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 blah. And a lot of the times, because once you learn to critique music, you have to remove yourself from it in an artistic sense. You know, you could say what you want about the music itself, but you have to remove yourself from it and say, do I like it and is it good? 2 things. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not good. Just because it's good doesn't mean you have to like it. So, here, if you follow this, it should be good enough. I get a lot of music sent to me that doesn't necessarily sound good or bad. It sounds not done. Doesn't even sound like you finished it. You know, why are you sending this to me just yet? So, the way I look at it, it's the mid, low, high of the melodic elements, the mid, low, and high of the percussion, and then on top, you have the vocal. Now, the importance of each of these elements, in my mind, is somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with a C. We'll use connected. It's somewhat connected to the side. Yeah, it corresponds with the size on the graphic. So hi-hats and the melody / accent, pretty low value. Things like the kick and the bass, extremely high value. And not in terms of how much work you should put into it creatively, but how important it is to the whole song. So imagine if you heard a song, a hip-hop song, let's say, and a bass line never came in the whole song. That's kind of a big deal. I'd be mad after about 3 minutes, and I usually get mad after about 3 minutes, and no bass comes in, because that's what you're just waiting on. Right? You're like, okay, and another 8 bars of no bass. I can't stand that. So the vocals tend to usually be present, but they're not necessarily as important as things people like to say, just for a listenability factor. You know, if you're a rapper, then vocals are probably the most important thing to you. But in terms of just making a track that can be listened to by someone that doesn't know you, these are the things that appear in order of importance. And this is definitely a bare minimum thing. So, a bass, 1 808, a progression or a chord, 1 basic thing to fill up the middle section, and then a melody or an accent, which is just a little bit of added melodic input, just to make this a little bit of sprinkles on top. Then you have kick, snare, hi-hat. This is not up for discussion. If you were making a hip-hop song, there has to be a kick, there has to be a snare and a hi-hat. But it doesn't have to be a snare, it can be a snap or a clap. Hi-hat can be a shaker or a tambourine, but you gotta fill that space in the frequencies, being the key word. So I've heard people, do this and tune it up and play it in. Not necessarily a hi-hat, but you gotta take that space up somehow. And then the vocals on top. And vocal is a pretty broad term. When I say vocal, all I mean is a spoken word element or a motif, per se, for those of you that know English vocab. A motif. So when you hear a lot of music, there doesn't necessarily have to be a whole vocal concept in it, but there has to be something that people can attach to all that music. So if you listen to Skrillex's stuff, you have all this very, very full melodic content, but we're all just kind of waiting for the drop the bass. Yeah, like that drop the bass is one of the most important parts of that song. Because if there was no vocal anything, they'd be like, that Skrillex song that goes, wow, wow. You gotta have the song that says drop the bass. At the bare minimum, you gotta at least give it a title. You gotta give it something, some sort of vocal motif to just tie the whole thing into a nice concept that anyone can digest. And this is for most genres. I would say house music, dubstep, trap, pop, singer-songwriter, rock and roll, hip-hop. If you're making really niche, minimal techno, I suppose some of these things are debatable, okay? Or ambient music. I suppose you don't necessarily have to follow all of these, but this is the 90% of music, 90% of the time, basic chart here. Y'all feel me? That make no sense? Cool? All right, awesome. So going back to this, we have done all of that. We've done it pretty minimally. So we have all the stuff in the middle, which is this and that. I'm not sure if I can solo a bunch of stuff on my computer like that. So I'd say all of this is the middle. Let me come over here. With the string line, the dun, dun, debatably being the melodic accent here. It's a little bit of tone that even though melodically it's not different, sounds out of place in the context of the song. And when you hear it, you're like, oh, cool. After that, we have our bass line. Very simple. You got the full run of drums with a little bit of extra. And then the vocal on top, and the vocal is doing most of the work here because that was what the email said. They wanted it to be very vocal focused. We got everything we needed. On top of that, there's a little bit of sprinkles on top. We call them Versace sprinkles in my friend group. We put a little Versace sprinkles on this beat to make it sound extra tight. So we have a lot of non-musical elements in this song that exist purely just to keep it moving, because human beings like a little bit of reassurance. You know, this is very much a psychological thing, not a musical one. So after 8 bars and the same thing has been happening, we need to, okay, what, are we getting there? Is something happening? You need that. So for that purpose, we have this thing, transition stuff there, the ever important 808 boom. We'll get extremely hype over that. And then, and then this thing too. Yeah, just white noise in the sidechain.
I think, oh.
Yes.
Do you have a reverse crash symbol?
Yes.
I think that's important to mention.
Yeah, reverse crash symbol. So that goes into the crash symbol. You go to the bottom left at Ableton, hit the REV button, short for reverse, if you can believe that. And it goes, reverses, just put it right up. It's actually right here. Bam! Look at that, it goes both ways. But these are just transitional elements. You gotta keep it moving, and the transitional elements are just as important as the actual hard musical creative decisions that you have to make when writing the song. If you guys listen to a lot of radio music, I'd say the guy that executes the good enough pyramid with absolute surgical precision is DJ Mustard. Yeah?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He does so little, but he executes it so well. It's so easy to listen to. It's so easy to remember. And the vocals, which are the focus, since he's being lazy on every other element, keep it going just fine. You know, I can listen to Chris Brown sing anything about people being loyal all day. That's my jam. Same with Paranoid and all the other songs, the thing he did with Tinashe. So, with that being said, a lot of the stuff that went down here can be applied to anything that you guys got going on. Because we're not perfect at everything. I am not necessarily a super awesome piano player, chord progression writing guy. But I know the bare minimum that I have to do for that, and I know how to make it up. That's why artists are different, because some of us are good at some things and not at others. So you can definitely take this pyramid and kind of shift it around based off of what's good for you or what suits your genre. But that's pretty much how I went about making this song. Any questions so far? Yes?
So you mentioned that you don't really focus on kind of the musical aspect too much. Like, do you play it like around different voicings of a chord? Like, if you have a voicing that's not really working, we add more notes to kind of make the voicing
Yes. I definitely do that, and a lot of it is kind of just me messing around. So with this chord progression right here, actually, they sent me the chords in an email. It was like F, G, C, E. Thanks. You know, like they didn't even write the other notes that they wanted. It was literally just the capital letter of the chord, right? I was like, okay, cool. So I just threw those in there and went into the MIDI roll and just started poking stuff in until it sounded cool. You know, there's always like the 7th, for instance. You know, you put a 7th on top of a chord and it like makes your eyebrow go up. It's like, whoa, what's this little bit of extra note right here? That is, whoa. So like this is pretty much all 7ths and like stacked octaves and things just to give a little bit, to add a little bit more meat and complexity to what is, again, not that complicated of a chord progression. So yes, that's definitely a big thing of mine, getting a lot out of a little. Anything else? Yes.
How many of these are like stock sounds?
None of these are stock sounds.
So,
You mean like stock Ableton sounds?
yeah, like where do you recommend we like search for sounds and samples? And
I think he means like from a sample.
From preset, how many presets or did you make them?
Almost all of them start as presets. I ballpark with presets, and then I'll go through and modify things to get specifically what I like. So the chord progression, the little dead mousey kind of thing, was in like a hydrogen pack for Massive. I just went through, picked the cleanest one, and then made it even tighter. So a lot of the times, the majority of my sounds are sampled. I sample a lot from a lot of ridiculous places, and we're going to end up talking about that more. And then if I'm working with synths, I ballpark, because again, I'm a songwriter. I am not a synth god. I don't really know what every knob does. I just know the knobs I need to know. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
Are there any like go-to plugins that you use to help influence your sound?
Go-to plugins musically, I'd say Contact. Contact is my absolute jam. It's just a simpler on steroids. And then Massive, if I'm feeling kind of weird. I don't really get a lot of predictable sounds from Massive. Massive tends to be a lot more like openly electronic focused sounds. And that's about it. Everything else I throw in a drum rack or a simpler and just make do. Yeah. Might keep my musical plugin count pretty low just because I would rather know Contact and Massive really well than be the guy with like 400 VSTs and he doesn't really know how to use any of them. I'm not calling anyone out specifically, but I'm sure that guy is in this room somewhere who just buys every single VST. That was never really my thing. Yes.
That was my thing.
That was your thing. Yes, I'm talking to you, bitch. I've seen your computer, seen your plugins list.
So Payton, before you move on to the next thing, I want to know, when you were making this, were you fulfilled? Like you talked about this previously.
Yeah, I was actually pretty proud of this song. And not because I felt like I worked really hard necessarily. It's not like, oh, I did all this work and the musical inspiration struck me and it paid off. It was mostly what came down to it. It took me 4.5 hours to make this entire track from start to bottom, mix and master. My thing is, I work extremely fast. That's why I stay in business. I'm just faster than a lot of other people. But I did it really, really quickly, and the response I got was just like off the chain. Every single person I showed it to, they were like, "Oh my God, you gotta send me that. Can I find it on iTunes?" I'm like, "No, I can't send you it. I don't own the rights to it. It's already gone." And that's why I make music. It's funny that you said that because I'm not really interested. Or I am interested in self-expression, but I like it when it's something that I express lots of other people can identify with, you know? So I have fun making music, but I have more fun seeing people's reactions.
So would you say you source your inspiration from people that are in your camp, like people that like what you do? Is that what keeps you going when you have supporters?
Yeah, actually it's the best with nobodies. Or not nobodies, but people that I don't know.
Right.
So,
Strangers.
Because I don't make music for engineers. I don't make music for musicians. That's another logical fallacy that a lot of producers fall into. They make music and they show all their producer friends who are only going to pick it apart and not openly say that it's awesome. There's a lot of music that regular people listen to that might not be 100% in every single capacity, but it's their favorite song, even though it has its shortcomings in certain areas. And those are the people I'm aiming at. You know, I could really, really care what my producer friends think. You know, my instrumentalist friends think, because it's not for them.
Right.
I know exactly who I'm making music for.
And on that note, how do you reach out to those people? Is it just your friends and family, or is it like people on the internet?
Sometimes it's people on the internet, although I don't really get to publicly take credit for a lot of my music. It's only when I'm doing things like that I can whip these project files out. I DJ a lot, and I play a lot of my music in sets and get to see people's reactions. The classroom setting is awesome for me as an artist.
Right.
Because I get to have a class of people who don't already know but want to know. So you kind of have like that halfway where it's like they don't know but they're curious and they're willing to listen critically.
Sure.
And pleasing those people, like the fact that you guys all dug this song is like a big deal because you're not necessarily in the exact same industry as me, but you do know what you're talking about to different extents. So those are the people I tend to reach out to the most.
Thank you.
And girls. I ask a lot of girls about my music because girls don't care about my feelings. So they will tell me very, very quickly if a song is good or not good, and they won't tell me why. And that's exactly what I need. Cool. Any other questions?
If you didn't have the classroom or the deals with people, if you were back in the bedroom producer, how would you get your music out to people? There's SoundCloud, but not many people are on SoundCloud, not a huge audience of producers and people making music.
I think I made the most progress when I got out of my bedroom in every single facade, not just in a business sense, working at Dub Academy or playing gigs or anything, but just there's something about being out in the world and looking at people in the face when you play them your song and hanging out with people that are just way better than you that makes you better. And you can't you can't pay for that, and you can't read it in a book. But I think I started DJing downtown when I was about 16 years old, and then from that time to now, pretty much the only thing that makes me a better artist is my experience with people. I'd never watch a YouTube video and I'm like, oh man, all my songs are gonna be so much better now. It's always like interactions with people and going places and seeing what they do in real life. You know, so I would say if you're the producer club here, it's a great start. I used to go to Empire a lot. I met a lot of really, really cool people at Empire and just playing gigs and stuff. If you could just knock on doors of studios and be cool, you can totally learn something. Studio guys aren't the most pretentious in the business.
How would you recommend looking for gigs for like DJing if you haven't really?
Most gigs at this point, it's a matter of, it's pretty much all about who you know. At this point, because I know a lot of people every now and again will be on Facebook, like, oh, I need an opening DJ tonight, send me your SoundCloud link, or send me a mix, you know. That doesn't really happen too often, not often enough to build a career out of. And when it does happen, you're not really making an impression in that regard. You know, you got to get people's attention when they're not looking for it, you know.
That's also why you're here, because we're trying to do that for you, create that space in Austin for you locally.
Exactly.
That's why Payton's here, because he also wants to reinvigorate that scene. He wants to see more producers come up, and we've got talks with a lot of people that are coming up that you might want to be, networking with. People like Payton will be the foot in the door for you.
I mean, a lot of the gigs I get and a lot of the money I've made in music has been from people who ask me to do work but already know that they are going to say yes. Like a lot of the gigs I play, a lot of my best gigs is like, oh, hey dude, you want this gig? I'm like, I guess. Like face to face in person, or I can just text someone and be like, because I know them well enough, I'm like, yo, what's popping with this set or anything? You got any openers? Yeah, what's the budget look like for that? And just slide in. I mean, you wonder how people end up opening for these big shows. They know the people who are throwing those shows. My biggest thing when I was probably at the peak of my DJ career downtown, I was in bed really well with Scoremore. And every single show that came through, I was just like, I can do that one, I can do that one, I can do that one, and that one. I mean, shows like the Sango show that we ended up doing at Empire was absolutely insane. And that was a really good thing. All the selection shows are awesome. They take really good care of me during South by, just little things like that. And it's not like there's going to be a job opening online and you just send them your SoundCloud link. I don't make DJ mixes anymore unless I'm getting paid for it. This is like a feature. Because really, you just got to be cool. They're not asking for, a world-class turntable performance. They just want someone to play music and be cool. So that would probably be the best way.
How'd you get connected with Selection?
I'm not connected with Selection. I mean, I know a couple of them. I know Sango and D-Pat and Spazzy Rocket, but like we're not like tight like that. Scoremore pays them to come through. If there's a Selection show that's happening in Austin, it's Scoremore's fault. So if you know the people at Scoremore, just be like, hey, I heard you bringing in so-and-so. What's popping with opening? Be like, oh, you want it? Yeah, sure. They don't care.
Talk to your fellow students. There's a lot of people that work for Scoremore that are promoters.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta back them up on get off the internet and go meet real people. Go to shows, meet music promotion companies, maybe promote for them, get to know the people, because they're the people that are going to be booking you. They're the people that are going to be booking other artists that you might want to open for. Go to concerts downtown and go shoot the bull with the sound tech guy in the back, because chances are he also does some work at a studio. Get to be friends with him, then you can go and check out a studio, get to know people.
I mean, my thing was I always used to cut it up with the door guys and the sound engineers, because I have been too young to be DJing in the clubs I've been DJing pretty much my entire DJ career. And it got to the point where like every single place I would go to, the door guys and the sound guys knew me, and I had somehow at one point had made the impression that I was over 21, and I totally wasn't. So I could just walk up and be like, yo, what's up? We're good, right? Nice. And just like keep walking. And then like you're in, and everyone's like, wait, who is this kid? He's like obviously not 21, but like he's everywhere, every night. Who is this guy? Like that's how it was. I would be in back rooms with people, and they're like, who are you? Like I've seen you on Instagram so many times. Like that's just who you have to be. If you're everywhere, you'd be like, okay, we need a DJ for this party. Who are we gonna call? What about that kid that we're always seeing all the time? I'd be like, he's got to be dope if he's everywhere. That's the thing. I mean, my friend Shane from Dub Academy, he is a Twitter god. He is the funniest person ever on Twitter. And he doesn't have a lot of followers. He's got like maybe 1,500 followers. But every single person that follows him is someone that's in the industry. And he's hilarious. He's so funny. And everything gets so many likes. So that's how he gets gigs. Because people are always thinking about how funny Shane is. So he just gets booked for everything.
It's not sad that social media awareness is kind of what we have to do nowadays, but it's because you have a saturated market. So your art can't speak for itself, you have to speak for it.
You got to do something well. You know, I mean, if your beats are absolutely 110% awesome, you don't ever have to leave the house. But odds are they're not, and even more importantly, they don't have to. No one's beats are 110% awesome. You just got to know what it is you're good at and make it work. Cool? Yeah, okay, so technical stuff. And this song, before we move on, what are we at time looking at? Hang on. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna plug my computer in. Should have done this earlier. So, mixy stuff. My approach on mixing, again, is very path of least resistance. And me being as lazy of a person as I am, if something doesn't work, I just keep looking and find something that does. I am not one to fight with my equalizers and compressors and things like that. If things don't sound good after the first or second try at compressing, then whatever. Let's get a new kick. And I feel like that's what a lot of people need to be doing. This is definitely an old school approach that I was taught. And he said, 1 compressor, 1 EQ. Go easy on the compressor, go easy on the EQ. Especially if you're working in a computer, because odds are things have already been EQ'd and they've already been compressed. Computers are not transparent. They don't have any character. So there's always compression coming out of your music in a computer. If you're recording from a 64-track mixer, you got 32 mics coming in from a single room on a single take, you're going to have to do a lot of work. But if you are working in a box, it is not required. And if your kicks are not sitting or your kicks aren't hard, get a new kick. Don't compress it 90 jillion times because it does not make it sound better. Does anybody actually know what a compressor does? Can you tell me in 1 sentence? Mitch.
Limits the dynamic range of a sound.
Yes! Perfect. Couldn't have said it better. Yes, a compressor just reduces the dynamic range of a sound. And by dynamic range, all I mean is the difference in amplitude. Throw out some sciencey words here. So, on the mixer, you know that we start at 0 and we go down. So if the loudest your signal ever gets is -3, and the quietest it ever gets is -15, that's a pretty big difference. And some things, you don't want to have that intense of a difference. The bigger the dynamic range, the more natural it feels. Okay, so if your voice is uncompressed, your voice will sound really natural. You don't really overcompress acoustic guitars. You want them to retain their naturalness. Whereas certain drums, you want them to be a little bit more in your face, but it's not adding power. Compressors do not necessarily add power. All they do is reduce the dynamic range. So if you reduce the dynamic range of a sound, you can then collectively take all that and move it closer to the top. You're not turning the volume up, but you perceive it as being louder because it doesn't get as quiet as it used to. It's not technically any louder. So if you think about this on a kick, if you have a kick drum and it just goes boom real quick, there's not that much compression that you can do to take any less dynamic range out of what is really just a millisecond long bass hit. You can't compress that any further. Compressors need something to work with. So a lot of the times people will use compression to adjust the attack of a kick or a snare, but when it comes to really getting a lot of body out of a snare drum, you're better off just turning it up or getting a better snare. That's why people spend so much time having nice drums. If you're miking a drum set, compressors won't save you that much. You have to have a nice kit and a nice room with nice mics. All compressors do is control things, but if things suck, then they suck. So that's just the way it goes. So a lot of the stuff on here, there's not too much compression happening. If we look at this, on the auto filter, this is something that I do on every single track, right around 100 unless something is really out of control. And then we have a compressor, really not even doing too much. The reason that this compressor exists is because during the build-up, things get out of control. So if you watch the meters, on this one right here, as the cutoff opens, there's more volume. This is something that we want to control. And then we have a sidechain right here, and sidechain compression is kind of the greatest thing ever in electronic music, so I would suggest you do that often. The reason that the sidechain exists in this is because in a lot of new school music, your low-end mix is really only competing with the kick drum if you do everything right. Okay, so if you have a bass source of some sort and you have a kick, people are like, oh, how do I EQ this kick to sit in the mix with the bass, or how do I make the bass work? You know, you've got all these little dips on the EQ curve. Yes, bitch?
Can you explain super quick what a sidechain compressor sounds like?
Yeah. Hang on, in 1 second.
Oh, sure.
So you see all these little dips in the EQ and everything to try to make this kick and this bass fit together full volume. And that doesn't really make any sense because the point of a kick drum is that it's bassy, and the point of a bass is that it's bassy. You don't want any less of either, or else one starts to sound worse. So the reason a sidechain exists is because it is momentary compression, and by compression it really just comes out as volume control. So this synth is sidechained to a kick, so every single time the kick hits, the synth just gets a little quieter, nice and easy. You're just having a momentary dropout of one instead of trying to make the frequencies fight together.
Pretty hard sidechain right there.
Oh yeah, no, this isn't like a corrective sidechain. This is like a listen to me sidechain. Some sidechains exist correctively, and this happens a lot in rock music. Very subtle sidechaining, just to give the kick a little bit more room to breathe. And in trance music and in house music, you have the really deep breathing up and down sidechain. So this is a very dramatic sidechain. Another one would be the bass. So if we look at, or actually let's do this. See how it's bouncing up and down like that? This is more for fun than it is for corrective purposes. This is just to add to the music. But that's what a sidechain exists for. So if you roll everything off in sidechain, you're going to create a lot of extra room in the mix without fighting with an equalizer. So, yes?
Can you explain EQ?
Sure. Here, let me go. I think there's something that's getting EQ'd pretty hard up here. Let's see. Next, synth stab. Pretty easy stuff here. Again, just a compressor to control the extra nonsense on the top. And a sidechain. Just rolling off the low end again, because we really want this to breathe. We got a pad. Same thing, sidechain, roll off. Symphony thing, sidechain, roll off. Roll that. Piano. We got a roll off on the bass and a sidechain. And then on here we have a roll off and a sidechain. And that's it. So you see I'm really not fighting with a lot of my stuff here. And the key here is that I just picked stuff that would work together naturally. I just picked these synths because they had qualities that I needed, not because they sounded cool. So I need a lot of hiss on top. I found this thing right here. I wanted it to have a little bit of edge. I found this. I like all of the qualities of every instrument. I'm not trying to take anything out. So when it comes to actually working with a whole frequency spectrum on a master channel, mid frequencies and high frequencies tend to get along pretty well. If anything, I'm turning the highs up because whatever is coming out of massive or contact is too dull. The low end is the problem, and a lot of the time, you need to just take the low end all the way out. Only when I'm doing things on vocals am I really getting into the meat of EQing in any sort of way. So if you could just make enough room in the low end, if you look at the bass is completely raw. It's coming straight out of contact. That's all. Nice and easy.
Can you play just the bass and the kick so I can you can actually hear that side chain?
Sure. Here, let me get this kick up here. And we'll solo these together. So you can see the kick out just the kick, you can hear it. There's really not much going on here besides a CLA 2A, which is technically a compressor, but it's more of a saturator, and it's just to get a little bit of tone at the top end because it's a very pure kick. But aside from that, got it tuned down, 4 steps, roll off a little bit of the attack. It's the Lex Luger kick number 2. You don't have the Lex Luger kicks, you really should get them. They're money every single time. Every single song is a Lex Luger kick. And I just process it differently. You know, very slim and to the point process I have here. Yes.
How do you go about separating the sounds in the drum rack into different tracks?
Yeah, so moving all the drums out into different things, there's a couple reasons to do this. The main one is that it's kind of a pro move. If you're making professional music, you're gonna end up sharing it with people, in which case you gotta have it broken up. It's gotta be easy to digest. You know, if you have a whole drum racks with the drums that you send to someone, that's the worst thing ever. And you're just eating up more space in your Dropbox when you gotta bounce them up again. So I put just about everything is broken out, and it's also just easier for me to see and to organize. You know, it's very easy to differentiate exactly what's going on with the kick and where the kick comes in and where it comes out with everything.
So do you just have that one drum rack copied to a bunch of different like channels, and you just in each one have that instrument that you want in that channel playing?
Yeah, exactly. So you can actually start with a single drum rack with like all 16 drum sounds in it, and you can take a single cell and just drag it out into the empty space, and it'll make a new drum rack and copy the MIDI. So you can start all together and then just pull it all out. And I know that there technically is a breakaway within the kick or within the group, but it doesn't stem like that. You can only use it to mix like that, but when you stem it, it doesn't work like that. So you might as well just do it from the beginning.
And explain stemming.
Stemming? Okay, yes. So stems. A stem is just an individual print of every single track, and you send stems to people if they are going to mix it or master it or remix it or anything like that.
Audio. And by print, you mean?
So just a straight hard bounce to an individual MP3 or a wave.
And by bounce, when you're
No, get out of here. No. It's a bounce, an export, right? You know, we all together, export's a pretty general term.
just audio. It's literally the audio that you have on your phones. It's just audio, and then people will mix it together. It's
Yes.
just individual parts.
So if you were going to pay another guy to mix and master it, which you should, there's no shame in the game, you will have to stem stuff. So might as well just make it easy. And it's also easier to see. It's just an organization thing that I started doing from the beginning. This is how it works in Pro Tools. You can't really mix really wide MIDI tracks in Pro Tools, and every single professional that you work with will be an old guy who uses Pro Tools.
Yeah.
So you might as well just make it easy for him, you know? Make it look kind of like Pro Tools. Cool. So let's make a new track. Yeah, not gonna say that. Yes.
On organization, are you one of those guys that has like a template and you plug into that template every time?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So drum racks 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember I put a different track or a different sound in every drum rack, so kick, snare, hi-hat, and something else. I usually am bringing in a few stems or a sample, so I have 4 audio tracks and then 2 simplers. And I have the master volume down just a little bit because my speakers are ridiculously loud. And I always forget to check them before I hit play. So I just preemptively turn the volume down and then turn it back up. But yes, templates, again, it's just more efficiency stuff. The fastest that you can make your process, the better, because when you work in the moment, you're transcribing all of this creative inspiration that's striking you at the moment. That was always my worst thing, was just waiting for plugins to load when I had an idea. That's why I bought a nice MacBook. That's why I have the templates. That's why I have everything laid out. Because when I jump in, I just jump in.
It's just quick.
All I gotta do is drag a sample in. I don't really have a preset drum rack, but I have my 7 favorite kicks loaded up in the first one. And I really just use a Lex Luger number 2 at this point. It has a bit of an antiquated drum rack here. But let's do some sampling. I'm gonna drag this in here. This is our sample for the day. So, there are a couple different ways to approach sampling. Sampling is definitely my thing. I'm not a synth guy, I'm definitely a sample guy. So you can hard loop a sample, right? That's exactly what's happening here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3. Now this is actually calling 126 BPM. I like my stuff to be a little bit more literal, so I'll half it to 63, and there you go. Nice hard loop. Now, to make a hard loop sound better, do you guys all know your warp engines?
Don't assume that. But
I was about to say, anybody know anything about warp engines? Bet you didn't, because I didn't. Let's see. Down here, at the bottom of the clip, you have beats, tones, texture, repitch, complex, and complex pro. This is so insanely important for importing samples. I can not even begin to tell you, and it changed the game for me. I've been using Ableton for like 4 years, and no one got around to telling me this. So, down here, beats, tones, texture, repitch, complex, complex pro. All these do is set the priority for whatever it is you're dropping in. If you drop a sample in and change the original tempo in any way, you will have to sacrifice quality immediately. If it's recorded at 120, you bend it to 121, something is suffering. So all you're doing here is being specific about what you want to keep and what you don't. So if you have a drum loop, it would be wise to have your warp engine set on beats, because it's preserving the attack of every drum hit and it's letting the empty space kind of mess up a bit, right? That's what you need. You need the impact on a drum loop. For something like this, I would have it on tones. There's a lot of musical stuff happening here, but there's no super intense impulses. There's no need to save them. We need the texture or the tone. Did I see a hand in the back? No? Okay, cool. What do I know? So same thing with texture. Texture is more like white noise and stuff like that. So cymbals, hi-hats, white noise, washes, put that on texture, you're gonna be all right. After that, we have repitch, which I'm gonna save. And then we have complex and complex pro. All those mean essentially is save everything. So if you put it on complex, everything is important, save all of it as best as you can. The problem with this is that it is kind of difficult on the computer, especially if you put it on Complex Pro. So if you got a weak MacBook, maybe don't make Complex Pro your first choice. It also sounds very Ableton-y. I can't really explain it, but you guys ever listen to music and you kind of just know what they made it in? I feel like Complex Pro is the giveaway of what software you use. It just has like this tinge on it. So Complex Pro would be wise if you're DJing an Ableton set and you have entire tracks and you're bending them up and down 3 BPM or so. This is just saying save everything, but you will need it in CPU space, so it makes more sense to be specific. So I put something like this on tone, and I put the grain size all the way up. I don't know why, I just think it sounds better. And there you go. So now if I drop this to the same tempo, or if I decide to speed it up, there's not all this weird jitter. You know, you guys ever try to bend something in Ableton and it kind of stutters on you? That's because your warp engines are not set properly. Very important with vocals. If you have a vocal track and it always seems like your vocals are kind of jittering in between words, it's because the priority is not set. So for vocals, tones, make all the remixes you want. Yes?
For those of y'all that don't really know about warping, all it does is split the sound into grains, and when you select the priorities like beats, then it'll say, okay, well the grains are going to start and stop on a hit, or the tones, it'll be on a tone. And so when you pick Complex and Complex Pro, it doesn't listen for any specific place to cut it. It just cuts it every few samples, makes it constant, and to keep everything as consistent as possible.
And you can hear it.
Okay, do you own warp markers?
Yeah, we're gonna get right into that here in a second. So, if you have your warp engine set properly, your transposes are gonna sound a little bit more authentic. Your tempo bends are gonna be a little bit easier to listen to, blah, blah, yada, yada, yada. So, let me speed this up. Let's say we make like a 75 BPM, tune it up a bit. Bam, that's a hard loop. Nice and simple. Really important tricks there with the warp engines that a lot of people forget. So there you go. Now, let's say we wanted to do this a little bit more intricately. We could take this, I'm going to do click and hold, hit tab, and we're going to set it into our track number 7. This is what it's sitting in this session. zoom in a bit. Let's put this master loop on here. Another way that you can sample, especially if you like to experiment and your genre kind of favors these things, is you can click within the clip and do Command E, which will split it. So like this, that. I don't really know how you'd want to do this. Let me tune this up. Then, I don't know, let's grab this and set it here. Make that a little longer, make all these kind of blend in. Let's tune this one down, because why not?
So while messing around, do you know why or if you start with a sample before you start with a drum loop? Do you usually do it that way?
I almost always start with a sample or a musical piece of some sort, because that's the hard part for me.
Gives you the context.
Yeah, exactly. I know I can make drums and I can make bass lines. That's kind of my thing. So that, in my mind, is a given. So before I start, I would like to have a sample or a vocal or just something, because the drums and the bass will come. They always do. So here. And you can cut up a sample and do that whole thing. That takes a little bit more time, but like, kind of cool. Then we'll come over here. Let's look at another way. And this is like the classic MPC way of doing things. And this is the slice to new MIDI track. A lot of people are wondering how to make MPC style beats in Ableton because they don't think it's possible. Believe me, it is. So we got one warp marker right here, and that's this little yellow square up top. I'm going to set a couple more warp markers on important moments in the song that we would like to chop. This is going into some sampling theory here, but the whole point of old school sampling was that you were just starting a sample at different moments throughout the sequence and hopefully rearranging them. So if you're starting them at a certain point, whatever that point is, needs to be an impulse of some sort. So a bass hit or a snare drum or some part of the music. So we'll do this from the top. I want the snare in there. I want that. Then we'll get this bass. Then we'll get this too. So you can see there's kind of a marker on every strong note. And then the snare, because I like to have a snare in there. Nice and simple, got a couple here. Now that we've done that, we can do right click, slice to new MIDI track. I have mine set to, let's do built-in 0 velocity. And then we have it set to warp marker. So it's gonna create a new slice on the start and end of every single warp marker, and it's gonna set it in a drum rack for us. So we do this, there we go, bam. There you go, right? After that, let's put some chokes on to make it easier to play. Let's do this. I'm gonna put everything here on the choke group 1. A choke group, again, is kind of an antiquated term that belongs to the MPC. But if it's all in choke group 1, no two sounds from choke group 1 can play at the same time. So we want every single one of these to cut the last one off. So that. Let me go down the list.
I'm going to put slice 3 on choke 1.
Oh, did I? Good man.
So if you have a whole drum rack, like this, like if I have hats and everything in there, and I don't want any of the bass leading over into when I hit the snare, I'll go and put it all in choke 1.
Yep.
Yes, and they'll kill each other in succession. So now that, yes.
So to clarify, you sliced it to MIDI so that you could use a drum pad or MIDI.
Yes, on all the moments. Every warp marker is a moment on the pad. Now that we've done that for this, since it's a sample, if you have a drum loop, maybe you don't want the release all the way up. I do, so we're gonna turn this up. Now if you hit 1, you can pick your finger up and it's all gonna ring out to the end. after that, I like to tune stuff down because I think stuff that's tuned down is cool. So we're gonna go to the transpose and let's just do 4. Cool? Everybody with me?
Is there like, when you transpose stuff, is there like special numbers, like don't go odd or only even?
No. To start with, I would transpose it all down by the same amount to begin with. And usually there's like a little leftover stuff like this. I would maybe go up 5 steps on this, because you can have them all transposed independently. And sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. It depends.
If you know your note values, if you know how notes work in semitones, then you shouldn't have a problem with that because you're just going by 5th, 7th.
Exactly. And sometimes if you want a little bit of anticipations, you can just do like a 2-step up on one individual sample. Whatever it is you're into. But let's see if we can do this off the top here. It goes... Not that fast. Turn this metronome on. And I guess we're going to go... What's that? 2, 3, and... Probably wasn't perfect. Take a look at it here.
Okay, we can cheat.
Go on, top, guys. Cool. We'll let it live. But there you go. Now you got an MPC style chop. And there's lots of ways that this would be important if you like hip hop, which I'm pretty sure we all do here. So after that, to make the sample blend, we'll stick a kick in here. Put it on every single impulse. Tune this down a bit. And then put a sidechain on. Sidechaining on samples is definitely kind of a big deal because samples will eat into the kick's space. And then I'll just throw something together real quick. Let's get everyone's favorite drum kit, everyone's favorite snare, snare number 4. Y'all know what it is. Oh yeah, it's this one. Just because I really don't feel like being the dude to dig around for samples in front of people.
If you're not like in the know about producer trips like this, it's just that we're all so tired of listening to them, but they sound so good, so we keep using them.
Yeah, like what are you gonna do? Let's see if I can do a hi-hat off top.
How do you spread the hi-hats out like that when you select?
B.
That's draw mode, you hit B.
Yeah.
No, like when you select like 4 or 5 slots in a row and it draws individual ones.
Oh yeah, you just hit B, it turns into the pen.
And control 1 and 2 will change the grain size of the hi-hat. So if you press control 2 a couple times, it will get wider like in the end.
If you're not like familiar with their keyboard shortcuts, you know how like it's important to know Control C, Control V, and like Microsoft Word. Like
There's a lot of good stuff here.
Get to know your keyboard.
There you go. You got a beat.
Any rappers?
Anybody got bars? Anybody got bars at all? No? Okay, cool. I'm not going to spend too much time on that one because there's no telling what I'll end up making in front of you guys. Let's go into this one. This is the last way of sampling. Yes, sir.
Quick question. Every time like I've tried to sample music like you were just using right there, I always look for parts that like don't already have drum parts
Yes.
on them. How do you feel about that?
Normally, I would agree with you. But for jazz music, a lot of the times when you sample jazz music, you're going on with the natural tempo. And also, those drums are pretty subdued, so they would layer easy.
And sidechain them. So.
Exactly. I mean, if you have a lot of extra drum material that would not layer nicely with what you have, then you should, pick a different sample or find a different part of the sample, in which case I would completely agree with you. But in that case, I don't know, it just sounded cool. There's no rules to this anyway. Yeah.
Do you ever go like sample searching? Like, do you record stuff everyday life? You just be like in the car and hear something? Cool?
Sometimes, yeah. I know some people that do it way better than I do. I usually do it as necessary. And when it comes to actual finding like samples to use in songs, I used to be a big YouTube guy, but I don't really anymore because part of the deal is that I don't have any samples of my music. So, because they don't want to pay to get them cleared, because I've never had a platinum record, and it's hard to convince people to spend that kind of money on you. But a lot of times I'll make my own samples. That's definitely something to consider, especially now that I have a tab at Orb, and they pay session players. I'll just invite everyone I know that knows how to play anything to the studio, and we'll just jam, and I'll record it all and sample it later.
If it's non-musical stuff, it's really fun whenever October rolls around and it starts raining. Just record like ambient street noises, and it works really well with atmosphere. And just, it'll give you like that vinyl tackle feel, and you just use that.
I actually did something like that on another beat if I can find it, because I'm kind of proud of it. It was a total pain in the ass to make. I think you guys would jive with this if you like old school stuff. If that's what I decided to call it. Yeah, cool. Look at me. Don't look at the titles of my tracks. It's actually for sale. Email me about it.
No plugs, Payton.
Yeah, I know, no plugs. I'm sorry. The sponsors would be mad. This is not that type of thing. Okay, yeah. So let's keep it moving. This is the last way to sample, and I've been doing this a lot more lately. It is not the easiest way of doing things, but if you like really cool instruments that are not necessarily synthesized or sampled, this could be your thing. So, if you hear cool textures or moments in songs, this is a sample that I found just kind of digging around. It sounds like this. What even is that? I don't know. But I set it into a simpler, and if you know how to work simpler well enough, you can have your start, and then have your start roll into the synth, and then if you look at the loop section, you can turn loop on, and then have your fades adjust, so that once the sample travels to here, it's going to fade out, and then fade back in at the start. So you have an infinite loop.
So is that how you get those like really extended vocal loops that sound like
Yes.
this? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll today.
What's the difference between simpler and sampler?
Simpler's easier. I don't want to give Ableton what they want and say that it's simpler, but yes, it's easier because I'm not gonna buy into that.
It doesn't have the saturation. It doesn't have the different tabs.
Yeah, there's a lot more filtering options and built-in EQ options. There's some saturator stuff. You can multi-sample in sampler, but if you have the time to multi-sample, then I don't know. We probably don't hang out.
What would you call that technique of that infinite loop?
I don't really know. I'm trying to think of something clever, like good enough.
It's granular synthesis.
That's pretty much what it is, yeah. But I think I can be cleverer than that.
We'll do a talk on that later in the semester too, actually. Making patterns out of sounds.
So we have that single sound. I have the loop on, and we just kind of mess with the loop size and length and fade to create this infinite. So it's kind of oscillating on itself across the fade lines. Also, to make it just a little nastier, I put the glide on here with a moderately long time. So now you can go. texture. Can't make that out of massive. And this vocal sample kind of just happened to line up perfectly. Drop. Hang on, let's see if we can make that happen. Yeah. Normally it doesn't work that well. The pitch drop at Ableton is really finicky.
Is that the Max for Live one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something like
but yeah, pretty much it. That type of stuff right there is just more of getting a lot out of a little. I'm an extremely lazy person. If you have not gathered this from this talk, I don't like to do a bunch of stuff. I just like to make my stuff sound good. Yes, sir. Did I see a hand?
No, you're just blind.
No? Yeah, I'm just blind. Hang on, I'm gonna put these on. What am I doing? Hey guys.
Righteous.
Yeah, look at me. So that technique in itself takes a lot of messing around. It's not, I really wish I could write a manual for it, but I can't. Just turn loop on and play with your loop length and fade to kind of create a pretty easy back and forth across the sound. I think I did this in one more song. The track title is pretty hilarious. I don't think it shows up in here. Cool. But I sampled one of my friends' songs. It's a song about a stripper.
Of course.
Yeah. And I found a set of Timbaland samples of him beatboxing, which is like the illest shit ever. Are you joking? Very simple stuff here. Just interesting texture. Any questions? Yes.
So you don't use any sends?
Yeah, actually I use a lot of sends. So sends, can anyone tell me what a send is? That is not you.
Isn't that just like you have A and B next to the master, and that's just like a reverb or something? And
Exactly.
You know how much of that sound is.
Sends are actually insanely badass if you know how to get, you know how to take proper advantage of them. So a send in itself is just bussing extra sound off into another track, and this effect is going to all exist on a different track, ideally, if you know how to use a synth properly or a send properly. So if you've seen the dry wet knob on an effect, specifically reverb, the dry wet, as you make it more wet, you're gaining more effect and losing source, right? And you have this balancing act to play. That's not fun, and it is not conducive for mixing in any way whatsoever. Once you gain stage, once you have your volume set, you need them to stay that way. Just because you add reverb, that doesn't mean that you have to go and balance the whole track, because that sucks. So things like atmospheric reverb should be in ascent. Things like atmospheric ping pong delay should be in ascent. Why? Because now if you want to have more reverb on something, you just turn whatever that is up on the A. So if everyone was wondering what the A and B knobs do, these attach to these. So on A, I have a reverb with the dry wet all the way up. And on the ping pong, I have a reverb, or a ping pong delay. Dry wet should have been all the way up. Made the song very quickly. Sounds fine either way though, get at me. But on reverb, you should definitely, pro tip, please roll off all the bass on your reverb.
Please.
You will get a lot of extra bass noise from reverb. You can't hear the reverb of the bass, but it will eat into space in your mix and just cloud the whole thing.
And if you play it on a PA, it's going to sound like shit.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many problems I've solved and how many people's lives I supposedly saved because they didn't know what was going on. But all they needed was a sidechain and a roll off on the bass. All of a sudden, you can hear everything. It's crazy. Yes.
Where do you usually roll it off?
Usually right around 1,000 on reverb. I try to keep it right in the mids for reverb because you really don't want anything too high too, because then it's gonna sound like you're in a shower. You know, you got to try to keep it real body focused. So if you look at the curve here, we're getting right around the bottom of the snare, and then we're losing it as the hi-hats come in, because hi-hats don't really reverb well either. Yes.
You usually just use the Ableton reverb?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that if you were doing like Foley or sound design or some sort of movie scoring, you could invest in one of the super nice reverbs that models all these types of things. But for musical purposes, I have yet to hear a reverb that was better than the Ableton stock reverb, except for maybe the D-verb for Pro Tools.
Have you heard the vintage verb from Valhalla?
Nah.
It's pretty good.
I mean, I'm sure it is pretty good. The thing is that, like, with the reverb, especially if you put it on high, which I never ever remember to do, but a lot of the times with reverb, all you're doing is creating a little bit of extra noise. If you want it to sound like it's somewhere specifically, then you would want to do that. But for most general musical purposes, it's not all that necessary. You're just trying to make it sound like it's not nowhere, which is what a lot of computer music sounds like. It sounds like it's nowhere. Yes?
Whenever you're putting it in the A or B, does that affect all of the tracks?
No, it only affects the tracks that you choose to turn the A knob up on. So you can just, a little bit here, a little bit there. You have some, and you have some. So the reason that this is important is another psychological thing, above all. When people hear music, they have a set of expectations and things that they have to have if you want them to like it. Whether you choose to follow them or not, it's up to you. But this is a pretty easy one. Have any of you guys, I would probably all you guys have, just heard a dead song straight out of Logic or Pro Tools or GarageBand? You play it and it's just a beat, it's just a synth, and it's bone dry. That creates a little bit of anxiety in you, doesn't it? It's a kind of, you can't explain it, but it really just doesn't sound good.
Because natural sounds have decay.
Exactly. When you exist in the real world, everything has a touch of its environment on it, right? That's how it lets us know that we're in the real world. So when you hear music that doesn't sound like it's anywhere, it sounds like you're listening to it in space, that turns people off. And they won't tell you that. They won't tell you, oh, it's because, there's just no reverb on it. It doesn't sound like it's on a stage or something. They aren't in tune with these types of things. But there are expectations that need to be met. If you fail them, good on you. We'll see how that goes. But this is a pretty easy one. And if you keep your reverb on a single send, everything sounds like it's in the same room. A lot of the times I hear people dial in reverbs differently for all these different elements, and then it really just makes it worse than if they just had it bone dry. Because it sounds like your main vocal is in the shower, your backup vocals are in a church, and your snare drum is like here. You know, the whole song, it sounds like it's all over the place. And again, it's just unrealistic. If you're trying to be unrealistic, if that's your steez, then go for it. But just for the most natural sounding reverb, the type of reverb that you hear in a lot of professional records that get a lot of plays, keeping it simple is going to be the thing. So all the reverb in this song is bussed to a single send. And it sounds like this. Nice and simple. But it's got a nice atmosphere to it. It's not too in your face. It doesn't sound like it's in a church or anything, but it sounds like it exists. There's a little bit of shine to it, right? Yes.
Just out of curiosity, have you ever sidechained reverb?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
All the time, yeah.
Absolutely. I usually sidechain reverb as more of just like a for fun effect and not for a right or wrong type purpose.
Yeah.
But yeah,
If you're
definitely.
making house music, you kind of have to actually, because if you don't do what he did, which is you roll off really high, then it's gonna linger around without an heritage.
Absolutely.
The lower you get, the longer the sound stays there.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of the times, I mean, there's a couple send tricks on here. One of my favorite send tricks is the redux. Have you guys ever played with the redux effect in Ableton? Is it not the illest thing ever? So if we listen to the keys here, and we put a redux on them, and we do this. Sounds pretty tight, right? But there's no dry wet knob on it, and it's a little overbearing, right? You take this redux, let's make a new C return track, set this over here. Now we have the effect of the redux on C. Let me just ease it in. Much more natural. Same with distortion. If you like distortion on your tracks, but you don't want it to be right in your face, you can do that. Another thing that you can do is, you can have a redux and stick an amp on there, ease it up a little bit, And then you have you put a little bit of chorus on there, spread it out. There you go. You got a really interesting multifaceted effect that you can control the dry wet on as one, which is pretty important. I'm not sure if you guys like Travis Scott's new album, but he did this really well. I'm gonna play a clip because it's super dope. So his voice, there's a little bit of grain on it. Actually, no, I think it's this one. This is the cleanest redux I've ever heard used professionally in a song ever. Because it's on a synth, so they can control it. So
What program was that made in?
I don't know.
Probably Pro Tools.
I know that they use pretty much every single one. I've read a lot of interviews and seen a bunch of stuff with Mike Dean and Hit Boy, and different parts of every song come from different places, but they usually end in Pro Tools. Just because Pro Tools sounds the best. Straight up, I'll say it. A lot of the times I'll send my music to friends just to get bounced out of Pro Tools, if nothing else. It's loud. Pro Tools is really loud. Yeah. Anything else? Any questions so far? No? What's that?
I guess so. So at least from the project you opened though, it does seem like you usually keep it real simple with the sends though.
Yes.
Like usually just reverb.
It almost always starts with reverb and ping pong delay,
Okay.
and then I'll add more as necessary. But I don't really find myself doing that because, again, the purpose of a lot of the music I make is to be to the point.
Yeah.
And very vocal focused, very melody focused. There's not a lot of nonsense. What's up?
Ever compress on the sends or?
Sometimes. It depends. I'll compress a reverb at times if I need more presence, but I don't want it to be longer. You know, you can get a little bit of presence out of things by compressing wisely. Yes.
Have you done audio recording on Ableton?
Like long multi-track stuff?
Yeah, just like.
I mean, the only type of recording that I do in Ableton is vocals, which I believe is one of the things I said I'd talk about, so thank you for reminding me.
Really?
But yeah.
I was gonna ask a question about that.
About vocals? No, lay it on me.
So I was experimenting with like a USB microphone, and like it's like super like high latency, like
Yeah.
and it's just
A lot of that comes from the preferences. If you adjust the samples that your stuff is coming in on, you might be able to ease your latency issues.
Get an interface.
Or get an interface. Also important. Might as well. Universal Audio, the Apollo, it's a great one. Save up your pennies.
It's like $100.
Focusrite? Oh, the Focusrite's good too.
That little Alesis IO2 thing right there is like $30. I kid you not. Like
You can go to a pawn shop and buy a Pro Tools interface for $200. Like, just keep your eyes open. You know, all this stuff is pretty cheap. You have a lot of hobbyists that don't beat their gear very hard.
And
So-
one more thing, like kind of relating to that. So like a lot of the tracks I made on like Ableton and things like that, like you said before that you like to watch people's reactions and stuff, and I feel like they're kind of empty without like a vocal going on. So I always try to like rip acapellas like off.
Very
all
wise.
lines, and almost-
Very wise. Yes.
What's your take on
I rip a lot of acapellas and put them on beats because, and this is mostly a rap thing, no shade to rappers or anything, but a lot of them need a little bit of help when it comes to inspiration. So I'll make a beat, and if this is a beat that I could see Drake on, I'll put a Drake acapella on it. I can't tell you how many times I'll show someone an instrumental, they're like, this is alright, I guess. And then I put it up on SoundCloud as a remix with a Drake acapella, and all of a sudden it's dope. And now you want to buy it. So usually, whenever I'm sending beats to rappers to buy, I'll throw an acapella in there because it's convincing. You know, you put some sort of motif to it, like I said in the pyramid, then it stands, then it's complete, and you're like, oh, I see what this is, what this could be. Yes.
Can you talk about the EQs since you were talking about vocals?
Yes, that's actually exactly what we're about to get into.
Sweet.
So, vocals. Let's say you listen to a couple seconds of this song. This song we got paid to do for some movie of some sort. They needed a song that sounded like Scheme It Up by Drake. Couldn't afford Scheme It Up by Drake, surprise. So they paid us to do it. It took us about 3.5 hours to write and do this whole thing.
They been saying that I went ghost, but they be talking too much, they be doing the most. Like blah blah blah, well I'm doing a toast to the most high for all the attention that I've engrossed. Travel from coast to coast like I'm George Norrie, telling stories on how we can rise and survive from the pain to glory. I let my talk show, but this ain't nothing like Maury. I am not your father, but this this is your bedtime. I'm feeling so high, way up in the sky. Feeling like hills, I believe I can fly. Can't you see I'm going way up, way up, way up, way up?
Yeah, there you go. So that's the whole track. Rapper vocals. When it comes down to making vocals sound nice, it comes in 3 phases specifically. Compress it, EQ it, reverb it, period. Everything else after that, it's up to you. But you gotta have those 3 things, unless you really want it to sound like a garage recording, in which case, go for it. But on this track, there is a LA76, which is doing a lot of work.
They be doing the most, like blah blah blah.
So we're really cranking this 76 here, but
It's a compressor if you don't.
yes. So we have about 10 decibels of compression, which is a lot. Not many people would debate that, but I want this vocal to sound pretty crushed and pretty flat, just because the rest of the beat is too. So it would be very odd to hear a dynamic vocal on top of what is a relatively flat track. On top of that, we have the LA2A, which I also don't think is doing that much, but the LA2A just sounds nice. So we got the LAs happening here. I'm gonna turn the reverb sends off. So completely dead and dry, we have this.
Too much, they be doing the most, like blah blah blah. Well, I'm doing a toast to the Most High for all the attention that I've engrossed. Travel.
The vocal sounds more compressed and more present. Yes.
Do you remember how far you mic'd the vocals and like?
How far away?
How'd you mic the vocals?
I think, what were we using? We used like an MXL, like something really weak. And I had him about 6 inches away, but he's loud.
Sure.
You know, I mean, the levels were set mindfully, and you still see he's coming in pretty close to the top. And he was in between 3 to 6 inches away from just the direct face of the mic the whole time. We have a booth, so it's really quiet in that regard, and it doesn't bounce. If you have natural reverb in your room, you might want to rethink your distance, just because they can get into each other's way. But it was, yeah, just right up front, nice and loud. Okay, so.
They been saying that I went ghost.
Now, when you EQ vocals, it comes down to 3 main things. First off, take the bass out completely. Human beings, our voices don't exist to carry bass. The information in a human being's voice is in the mids and the highs. Everything else is just nonsense, especially musically. Once you've compressed of vocals, the loudest frequencies, which tend to be the bass, get louder. A compression, even though the dynamic changes, also your frequency dynamic readjusts and gets more level. So once you've done that, that's usually why we compress first, then EQ, because your compressors change the landscape of your frequency range after the fact. So we take all the bass out, and the way I was taught to do it was just to turn the bass all the way up to like halfway, and then go backwards until it sounds normal. So right now, obviously weird. Just slowly go to the left until it sounds normal.
They been saying that I went ghost, but they be talking too much. They be doing the most, like blah blah blah.
So
well, I'm doing a toast.
Pretty easy to understand. After that, we have the mids. I usually just do a little bit of a dip in the mids somewhere. You just gotta figure it out. I'm not a numbers guy. But I always just turn it up and do sweeps because there's something in someone's throat. Always. You can always hear it. We all have that sort of moment in our voices that's louder than everywhere else. It's where we resonate. You know, so the bigger the person, the lower the resonating point is. But we all got them, right? So his is right up here, especially since he had allergies that day. So that also plays a part. You can deaden lisps with an EQ. You can remove allergy season with an EQ if you know what you're doing. What's up?
I just laughed.
Yeah. It's true. And then after that, we bump the highs up. In doing that, you're just getting all that clarity out. All the S's and the T's and the natural air of your recording are all on the high end. So bring it up. Don't go crazy with it because you will collectively turn all the highs up on the master channel, ideally. So just bump it out until it's even, right around 3 decibels at the most, maybe 6 if your person has a lisp. And then after that, a little bit of reverb.
They been saying that I went ghost, but they be talking too much. They be doing the most, like blah blah blah. Well, I'm doing doing a toast to the most.
Blends in pretty well. On top of that, there are some amenities that you could add to the vocals. So a little bit of ping pong delay never hurts.
They been saying that
The chorus part of it? The chorus.
And the chorus. The chorus, I kind of have like the super secret chorus trick. That's probably not that big of a secret. But if you turn the modulation all the way to the top left, high pass all the way up, your dry wet essentially just becomes a stereo knob. There is no noticeable chorus, it just spreads. So if you don't like to use mid-side spread, use the chorus. I have it on here pretty lightly just because the original vocal, this song is very wide. You know, all the musical elements that I have are very busy on the sides, and I wanted to make sure that the vocals existed in that space somewhere. I don't want them to be obviously dead center. So once we've got that, ad-libs, I usually radio filter my ad-libs.
keep it 100.
There you go. Blend in pretty well.
Wanna be alone just to keep it 100. And they been saying that I'm wet ghost, but they be talking.
Now, other things you can do, you can DS vocals, if that's your thing, especially if you're rapping. Those types of vocals tend to require a lot of control. I know some rappers that every single T and every single P and every single S is just like a knife. In which case, throw a de-esser on there, it's pretty easy. For those that are curious exactly what a de-esser is, it's a compressor, so it's going to, perception-wise, quiet things, but only in the high range. It has like a little filter built in, so only this stuff gets compressed, which is where all the S's and the T's and the P's are. I did not de-ess this one because we did it in 3.5 hours. I probably should have. If I had spent more time doing it, I would have. And then the chorus vocals. So if we're listening to the chorus vocal here.
High, way up in the sky, feeling like hills. I believe I can fly. Can't you see I'm going way up?
All the individual tracks in the chorus collectively have less bass than the verse would. So if I were to copy the EQ curve from the verse and put it on the chorus vocals, I would bring that up a little bit. Because now you have 3 of them and they stack. So even if your bass is pretty chill and alright and believable in the verse, once you layer 3 of them, it's gonna come out. So the whole chorus is noticeably drier. But that's fine because we layered it and panned it. After that, I really don't think I did that much. There's auto-tune on here. I didn't know I had auto-tune, but there it is.
High, way up in the sky.
It always tells me it doesn't want to work. But yeah, you guys all have a plugin that's like that. This one, all right, retune speed, G minor, 50% tracking.
High, way up in the sky, feeling like hills. I believe.
Now the thing about KJ is that KJ has pitch. He can hit notes, but it's not really that pleasurable to listen to, especially when it's filtered. So we enlisted our friend Cadence to help us out. So
Feeling so high, way up in the sky.
yeah, and her sister's name is Lyric.
I'm done.
Don't you hate her? I hate her too. It's cool. We don't get down anymore. But
Feeling so high, way up in the sky.
a little bit of female vocal on top of your male vocal is just interesting. It sounds really good, and it breathes a lot of life into a whole range of frequencies that male vocals can't really get into. So all together, I don't know if I can solo both of these groups.
I'm feeling so high, way up in the sky, feeling like hills. I believe.
Versace sprinkles on the vocals. There it is. The female vocals just make it kind of nice.
Bedtime's feeling so high, way up in the sky, feeling like hills. I believe I can fly. Can't you see I'm going way up, way up?
Bam, vocals. Nice and easy. They don't have to be difficult. Just try to have good gear. That's like actually one of the things that I would tell people. I had a really bad interface and a really bad mic, and all my stuff was just a total pain in the ass to mix. When I go to Orb, or even if I'm working at Dub, the interface, the mic, the room, it's the cabling, it's all just better. So whenever I get stems that were recorded at Orb, 1 compressor, 1 EQ, money. If I get basic USB mic inputs, those require a little bit of cleanup. It just comes with the territory. If you were a vocalist, really the main thing that I would suggest you invest in is a good interface. It doesn't have to be like this 32-track live thing, but if you can just get 2 clean-ass channels and a good mic and a good gold-plated Mogami cable, you're gonna save yourself a lot of trouble. A lot.
Comment, also like have a clean workspace. Like he clearly cares more about, keeping things simple, because the more you have plugins, the more you're gonna want to use them in situations that you don't need to. So just keep it simple. Also, could you talk about comping vocals real quick? Like,
I can talk about comping vocals, but I don't really do it.
I mean, like as far as takes go. Like,
As far as takes go, my regular way of doing things, and I usually delete extra takes. If I were to comp vocals, I usually do it take at a time. I don't have the lead in and then you say it and then you slide it in, because I'm not much of a vocal focused guy. I'm definitely a producer. When I do comp, it happens in Pro Tools and it's not me doing it. Whatever engineer is running the session, that's his job. So the guys at Orb, for instance, I know how to comp, but I'm definitely not a guy you should ask about it. These dudes are absolute pros, and they'll have 40 takes of one verse, and they'll pick out the best word from every single take and piece together just as one insane super take. And that's just how comping tends to go. These things take a lot of time. It usually takes 3 dudes to comp, and they all huddle around a screen, and they're like, this one here and that one, I don't know about that one. Maybe we can take the S and the O from this and put them together and make one word and bring it up. But aside from that, you can comp in Ableton. I would not be the guy to ask.
you're not the guy that spends like an hour trying to find every syllable.
No.
Exactly.
I demand a lot out of my vocalists if they're only my vocalists.
But only work with good stuff.
Exactly. I just like to start well. So if my singers come in, or if I have a rapper that writes from his own brain 16 bars and cannot say them into a microphone, like words that you thought of, you need to get out. Like, that's my thing. I don't really like to do that. I mean, if you are a skilled enough rapper or a skilled enough singer, you should be able to just knock it out. At least get through the take. I can piece together multiple long takes, but I'm not trying to do like these bar for bar A$AP Rocky style sessions. That's not, because that's what A$AP Rocky does.
No shade.
Yeah, no shade. No, A$AP Rocky's last record was alright, but that's what he does. He cannot spit his whole verses all the way through. So you gotta at least get through it if you want me to help you out. And if there's people where the purpose or the product warrants the effort, then it's happening at Orb, in which case I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and take a lesson, like treat your music well. So
Yeah.
if someone wants to work with you and they're like a vocalist, but they're like, no, I want you to do all of this, but also change it like halfway through the session, then don't work with those people.
Yeah.
Work with people that care about working with you.
I mean, I'm not sure how much time how often you guys work together, but if you work with someone and y'all work together well, you're gonna know. It's gonna be like the most godly experience of your entire life. Like, I spend so much time working with people that it's not going down. We are not on the same wavelength here, But there are some people, and it's just like, oh my God, this is perfect, and we're building all this stuff, and we're totally on the same page, and it's so much better than anything we could have done alone. That's like the most major feeling ever. So if you find people like that, try to keep them close, because they're going to help you out. I work with people from time to time that I don't already have a repertoire with, but I try to keep it to a minimum just because it's extremely taxing. It takes a lot of time, and I don't get paid by the hour, I get paid by the song, and sometimes I don't even get paid by the song. So if you're a dick, I'm not going to be in a session with you because I'm not getting paid and the song's not good. So if you respect yourself a little bit, you're going to find people that respect themselves equally as much and respect what you have together. Any questions? We have 5 minutes.
We'll open it up to questions, and just you can come up and talk to us.
Yeah.
But if you have any closing comments, if you thought maybe you didn't cover something.
The what?
Do you feel like you haven't covered anything?
No, I feel like I pretty much hit it all. I mean, at this point, I could Kanye rant about the process all I wanted, so it's probably good that we stop now. But, I mean, anything that you guys want to ask me, like when the lights come up and I'm packing up, like, please do. I would just rather not do it on a microphone.
Please make a line.
Right.